It's now been 3 years since the MCU debuted, the start of one Hulk story I need to see on screen and then never talked about it ever again. 2025 is set to bring in a wide array of exciting stories for the MCU, but the new year also means it's now been 3 years since one fascinating Hulk storyline began and was explored for all of a few minutes before being seemingly abandoned. The MCU timeline has seen some major growth in the past few years, with many key Marvel characters entering the fray in this time, and the franchise opening up its world yet further with the introduction of the multiverse. As a result, this period of time hasn't been an entirely straightforward one. The growth the MCU has experienced during this time should work well to ensure there's plenty of established corners of the world for follow-up stories to explore in upcoming Marvel releases, but they also mean that the franchise is having to execute an arguably even more challenging balancing act than ever before, since there are so many story threads and characters that need to stay in place and relatively relevant. As it stands, this has required some narratives to take a backseat, including one Hulk story that has been left in limbo for a few years now. The 2022 debut of Hulk's son has seen no follow-up in the years since. Given Hulk has largely been delegated to the MCU's background for a good portion of the franchise, 2022 offered a lot of promise for the future of the character. Not only did Hulk's cousin, Jennifer Walters, get her own superhero origin story and spin-off MCU show with She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, this show also provided a major twist by showing us Skaar, Hulk's son, and a notable figure in Hulk's comic history. The young Skaar is introduced at a barbecue in a surprisingly casual and brief cameo, but one that seemed to suggest big things for future follow-ups. Skaar's debut was in She-Hulk, Attorney at Law Episode 9, which released on October 13, 2022. Since the chances of the MCU exploring the Hulk story by itself seemed decidedly low, I was initially happy at the prospect that the MCU could instead delve into the Hulk's arc via his child. Not only would this provide audiences a look at some character development for Mark Ruffalo's MCU character, something that's been relatively absent due to his fleeting appearances in the franchise for the most part since Avengers Endgame itself, it also allows Skaar himself to get properly established, potentially teeing things up for another member of the Young Avengers. While there are still hopes that Hulk and Skaar could be shown more down the line, it's been a concept that has been unfulfilled for some time, with Skaar simply showing up in She-Hulk, Attorney at Law's ending, and then essentially disappearing from the franchise from that point. A degree of delay here was always inevitable, both due to the MCU having so many different stories to explore, and with so many releases being away from Earth, but with no MCU project on the horizon, yet confirmed to have Skaar or Hulk in it, things aren't looking especially promising. The MCU's best chance at a Skaar story looks like it's still some time away. Following the Marvels ending confirming that Ms. Marvel is building the Young Avengers, the team seems like the best place for Skaar. This is partially because of his age, partially because a sullen teen Hulk seems a fascinating addition to the team, and finally because this appears to be where the franchise could best utilize Skaar, mirroring much of the Hulk's own story being found largely within the Infinity Saga's Avengers movies. While this means Skaar's bond with his father won't be as explored, that may be a necessary sacrifice in terms of ensuring the character appears anywhere at all. With that said, Skaar's place in the team isn't definite, and even if it were, a Young Avengers-centered project still seems a considerable way off. While the first major building blocks are in place, it currently looks more likely that the current multiverse saga will at best lead to the first team's creation versus their first movie, especially given the focus appears to be on Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers, Secret Wars, And a young Avengers release between these two could risk complicating the Russo brothers' vision for the two major releases due to its proximity to the regular Avengers films. As such, it's hard to see a Young Avengers movie or series arriving before the end of the multiverse saga. And if this proves true, it would mean our best chance at getting an actual Skaar story would be still another 2 years minimum away, which would equal 5 years between the character's KVOTs and his prospective return. That said, there is one other point in time where it seems we could hopefully see Hulk and his son return, though there are some complications with this too. Avengers, Doomsday and Secret Wars may be our only hope in terms of seeing Hulk's son get a story anytime soon. The nature of Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers, Secret Wars already sets them up to be stories of a major scale. With Endgame and Infinity War directors, the Russo brothers returning for them, Robert Downey Jr. returning as Dr. Doom for Doomsday, and Chris Evans reported to also be set to come back as part of the movie's cast. Since the huge scale of Infinity War and Endgame saw most of Marvel's heroes return in the story, it stands to reason that this could be the case here also, setting up the potential for the Hulk's life to get another update. However, with Benedict Cumberbatch confirming in January 2025 that Doctor Strange won't be a part of Avengers, Doomsday, it does also seem possible that certain otherwise key figures could be missing from both films. The multiversal concept they're set to explore could easily be used to justify why some characters aren't present if reality hopping is at play, and new central characters like Doctor Doom will need time to establish themselves and make their stories as impactful as possible, which could logistically require non-central characters getting less focus for the narrative's sake. With that said, Hulk is one of the few remaining original MCU Avengers, so hopefully the franchise continues to allow him some time in the spotlight in the Avengers movies, which would arguably warrant his superpowered son appearing alongside him, as leaving him home while the multiverse is torn asunder could look a little weird depending on the specific circumstances. Even if it's just for one dazzlingly brief cameo, I hope the MCU addresses this unique family story again sooner rather than later, if only so it's not eons before the plot thread is next followed up on.